This is 4 yards of patchworked fabric, ready to be used in a garment. I'll show the garment in another film. This film shows you how to produce irregular patchwork like this from scraps. I've been working on this for a while off camera to try and get the process down and have 2 panels in progress. I'm happy with how the fabric looks together, how the complex edges meet and the zigzag top stitch. But I've managed to skew the fabric as I was adding panels, creating an excess of fabric here. I'll fix that later, but to avoid this skewing getting out of control, I'm producing 4 individual panels that will be joined later. My raw materials are 3 suit jackets and a pair of trousers, about £30 all in. These were unpicked down to their individual panels. The complexity of the suit jackets will make this process harder, but the final result more interesting. However, choosing to only work with trousers would make this process much easier and quicker. The garments you choose to work with will have a massive impact on the amount of time and effort it takes to join them and the final look of the assembled fabric, so choose wisely. I begin with a panel from the trousers. This is the front left leg. This gives me a width to work to and a straightish edge to work from. The first join is easy. I pull out this sleeve from one of the jackets, press both flat, line up and pin the edge, and run a straight stitch down the length. Press open the seam and top stitch with a zigzag. I chose a zigzag as it will protect the raw edges and offer some stretch. A twin stitch might have looked cleaner, but I didn't want to have to switch needles and add an extra operation. This is a situation where having multiple machines would be a boon. I'm now ready to add the next panel. I pick one that will fit into the corner created by the last join, and create the least amount of scrap. I eyeball a seam allowance on the work and cut into the corner. Press over the seam allowance and lay the work back out. I press the new panel flat, lay it under the work and mark the edge where the fabric overlaps. I can then trim any excess, leaving a decent seam allowance, and cut to the line on any corners or curves. I can then press over the seam allowance. Back at the table, I turn everything over to the wrong side and marry up the seams, pinning the seam allowance on the longest edge, then, starting at the corner, straight stitch to join. I pin the other edge and sew again from the corner. Sewing from the corner is vital to make sure that the end result lays flat. Finally, I press open the seam and finish with a zigzag stitch, then repeat, for as long as it takes. That's 12 operations for each panel. It's a lot of work, but this went quicker than I thought, about 3 hours for each panel. The edge will get more complex as you progress. It becomes a bit of a jigsaw, trying to find the right panel to fit the right section. Where there is a big jump, you may want to trim your panels to minimise waste, but the method I've detailed can be used to go around the most complex edges, and is worth doing as you'll get a really interesting join that makes a feature of the patterning in the original garments. With the 4 panels done, it's time to finish them for joining. I take out the excess fabric from the earlier panels. I lay out the fabric and manipulate it until it lays as flat as possible. This puts all the excess fabric in one area. I can then pinch out the fabric, creating a dart. I mark the end of the dart and where it meets at the edge. I then flatten this out and join the marks. I pin the lines together with the excess on the wrong side and sew with a straight stitch. I then cut off the excess, press open the seam, and finish with a zigzag. It's the same joining process for the bigger panels, and if you've been following along at home, by this point you'll be well practiced in it, so this shouldn't be too daunting. You might want to trim off any parts that really stick out, or maybe you don't. This is very much a project that you can interpret as you want, experiment, and play with. One thing to think about while you're doing this is making sure the direction of the weave remains relatively similar throughout the work, as this will affect how the final fabric drapes. When choosing the garments to work with, you should try to find items made from a similar weight of fabric with similar properties, but they will never match perfectly. However you plan to use this fabric, you will have to accept that this is going to drape irregularly, and ideally take advantage of this. Oh, Yeah, and the wrong side is going to be chaos. Beautiful chaos, but you will probably have to line anything you make. As an aside, most patchworkers would recommend squaring off your fabric into identical panels, which can be joined in rows. These rows are then joined together to make the larger sheet. If this is your first time patchworking, I would recommend trying this approach first, and you can see me doing that in my Phoenix T film. If you do take this irregular approach, please link anything you make in the comments. I'm really curious to see it. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy this little sewing channel, why not subscribe?